Have you ever spent years building something only to watch someone else break it in a single week? My name is Jonas Valente. For over a decade, I was the general manager of Hotel Cielo Azul, a five-star property nestled in the heart of Seville. Under my leadership, we'd weathered economic downturns, hosted royalty, and earned a reputation that made us one of UEFA's preferred partners. But just 14 days before the Nations League semifinal between Spain and France, an event expected to flood the city with high-ranking officials, media, and VIP guests, I was called into a meeting. Across the polished boardroom table sat two people, a regional executive with polished buzzwords and a younger man in his 20s wearing sneakers to a leadership review. "We're streamlining operations," they told me. A polite way of saying I was being replaced by someone cheaper, flashier, and far less experienced. They thanked me for my years of service, smiled, shook my hand, and handed me a severance package. I walked out quietly. But what they didn't realize was that the very system keeping their hotel from collapse was something only I knew how to run, and in 72 hours, that system would go dark. I didn't fight the decision. After more than 30 years in the hospitality industry, you learn that corporate loyalty is mostly performance art. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't sting, especially when I realized who they were replacing me with. Leo Hartman, 29, former app developer turned operations consultant. His credentials included 3 years working for a boutique chain in Berlin and a personal blog where he wrote about redefining legacy brands for Gen Z travelers. No real hotel experience, no crisis management, no idea what it meant to stay calm at 3 a.m. when the air conditioning fails in the middle of a foreign delegation stay. But what he lacked in depth, he made up for in confidence. I watched him on our first handover meeting, adjusting his smartwatch, asking shallow questions about automation possibilities. He didn't ask about the diplomats who expected handwritten welcome notes or the national broadcasters with detailed tech requirements. He didn't ask about our relationship with the Nations League logistics team, which I'd spent 6 months cultivating. Instead, he talked about removing friction and installing tablets in every suite. I could already see the crash coming, but they'd made their choice. What made the timing even more disastrous was that Seville was about to become the center of Europe. The Nations League semifinal between Spain and France was being hosted less than 10 minutes from our hotel. Our 110-room property had been booked out for months. UEFA representatives, sponsor executives, French team administrators, broadcasters from 5 countries, and more. Overflow guests were coming in from Madrid, Barcelona, and even Lisbon. And unlike most events, these bookings came with intense coordination, staggered arrivals, private airport transfers, media accreditation processing, and security clearance. Every hour had a moving part. The hotel's centralized booking system, owned by the parent company, had been glitching for over a year. It couldn't properly sync with UEFA's proprietary reservation API or third-party portals like Booking.com. It would frequently duplicate reservations, delete confirmations, or mark suites as available even when already occupied. I reported it dozens of times. Corporate shrugged. "We're looking into it." So I built my own workaround. A simple but vital script that ran each morning at 6 a.m., cross-referencing all external systems, checking for inconsistencies, flagging phantom entries, and creating a clean internal log. It was clunky, manual, and invisible to corporate's dashboard, but it kept things from collapsing. When I mentioned this to Leo, he smiled and said, "Oh, I'm sure there's a SaaS solution out there. We'll migrate soon." He didn't ask to see the code, didn't ask what would happen if it stopped running. I could have warned him, but I didn't, not out of malice, out of clarity. He wasn't interested in learning what I knew, only in replacing what I represented. 2 days before I left, I quietly disabled the auto-run function. The script would stop operating 72 hours after my departure. From that point on, the system would revert to its raw state, unstable, unsynchronized, and completely unaware of the logistical chaos about to unfold. On my last afternoon at the hotel, I stood in the staff hallway just outside the kitchen, watching the team go about their day. The pastry chef waved. Housekeeping staff gave me a respectful nod. Most didn't know I was leaving. A few who did looked uncertain. I'd gotten us through a pandemic, flooding, and an international summit. This Nations League week was supposed to be our crowning moment. Instead, I walked out of that building with a file of exit documents and a quiet, uneasy certainty. They had no idea what they'd just done, and by the time they realized it, it would be far too late. It wasn't just a job to me. Hotel Cielo Azul was my second life. Sometimes it felt like my first. I started as an assistant general manager 12 years ago, back when the building was still wrapped in scaffolding and the courtyard fountain hadn't been switched on yet. The project was a gamble by a mid-sized hotel group trying to break into luxury hospitality. Most in the industry thought it would flop. Seville, while beautiful, wasn't seen as a global event city then, but I saw potential. We launched with just 40 rooms and a handful of bookings. I worked 7 days a week for the first 18 months, built vendor relationships from scratch, trained every concierge myself, hand-wrote follow-up notes to guests who gave us even a passing compliment. It wasn't glamorous work, but it worked. Slowly, the word spread. Celebrities filming in Andalusia started staying with us. Corporate partners brought their annual conferences here. Eventually, we hosted heads of state, royals from the Middle East, and a NATO logistics team that needed a last-minute HQ during a European summit. What made it personal wasn't just the professional pride. 4 years ago, my wife Teresa passed away after a long illness. We'd met in Seville, in a little bookstore near the cathedral. She'd been my anchor, my reminder that there was life outside linen counts and room upgrades. After she was gone, I didn't know what to do with my grief. So I poured it into the hotel. Long hours blurred into longer weeks. I missed holidays, anniversaries, reunions. But in return, I found a strange sort of peace in the predictability of the work. Guests came and went. Rooms were cleaned. Bookings were managed. And in that rhythm, I found purpose again. I knew every member of my staff. I knew who was sending money home to Colombia, who had a daughter with epilepsy, who was going through a divorce but refused to talk about it. I didn't micromanage. I guided. That's why our team stayed consistent. While other properties in the region cycled through staff like seasonal fruit, we built a culture of stability. People trusted me, and more importantly, they trusted what we'd built. By the time I became general manager, Hotel Cielo Azul had expanded to 110 rooms and earned preferred status with multiple international event planners. Our guest satisfaction scores consistently ranked in the top 3% across the country. Our food and beverage program was recognized in 2 Michelin guides. But all of that only happened because we paid attention to details, to people, to patterns. It was the human element that made the systems work, not the other way around. That was the legacy I thought mattered. Not flashy marketing decks or branded pillows. Not influencer packages or imported lobby scents. Just honest hospitality, the kind that makes someone feel like they're in good hands even when they're thousands of miles from home. I didn't expect a plaque, but I didn't expect to be replaced like I was disposable either. Leo officially took over on a Tuesday morning, 4 days after I was informed of my transition package. The HR rep called it that, transition, as if I were being gently moved into retirement, not pushed out of the operation I'd kept standing through storms, both literal and political. I didn't make a scene. I showed up on time. I wore my best navy blazer. I even smiled. Our handover week was mostly symbolic. Corporate didn't expect a full knowledge transfer. They assumed Leo would modernize the workflow anyway. I offered everything. Room turnover schedules, contact lists for our preferred vendors, VIP protocols, our internal escalation ladder for UEFA guests. He nodded politely, took notes on his tablet, and responded with phrases like, "I'll digitize this," or "We'll streamline that." He treated legacy as baggage, and in his eyes, I could see he thought I was the heaviest suitcase of all. He was courteous, sure, but it was the sort of courtesy that came from ambition, not respect. Leo had already started tweaking processes by day 2. rerouting vendor deliveries, reducing concierge staffing during night shifts, and trying to replace our handwritten welcome cards with QR code greetings. He called them touchless hospitality solutions. I bit my tongue. The only conversation where I saw genuine curiosity was when he asked about the upcoming Nations League semifinal. "So it's a big deal, right?" he asked. I explained that the Spanish Football Federation had booked the entire 5th floor for delegates. France's traveling media team was arriving the day before, and we had security-swept rooms prepared for 2 senior UEFA executives. I told him there would be 3 different arrival waves, each requiring separate protocols, and that some of the bookings came through direct UEFA channels that didn't always sync with our master system. That was when I mentioned the script. "It's not elegant," I said, "but it works. Without it, you'll get duplicate bookings and missing confirmations. Happened all the time before I coded the fix." Leo smiled like I was showing him a vintage cassette player. "I'll take a look," he said. But I knew he wouldn't. To him, if it couldn't be downloaded from an app store, it didn't matter. I even offered to walk him through it. Step by step, he waved me off. "I'm sure we'll be fine. These systems just need to be used properly. I'm good with platforms." On Thursday, I submitted my exit paperwork. On Friday, I walked out the front doors carrying a small box with 3 books, a framed photo of Teresa, and my original GM nameplate. The marble lobby was quiet just before the afternoon rush. A few staff members paused what they were doing when they saw me. No one said anything, but I felt it. The weight of unspoken gratitude, the unease of change. That evening, I logged in remotely one last time. I accessed the reservation dashboard, checked the logs, and saw the auto script was still running. I disabled it, set the countdown for 72 hours. From that moment, the booking system would run in its raw form, fragile, unpredictable, vulnerable. I'd been its safety net for over a year. Now the net was gone. At home that night, I poured myself a glass of Ribera del Duero and watched the sun disappear behind the orange rooftops of Seville. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt like I'd just watched someone unlock a lion cage and toss away the key. But it wasn't my cage anymore. It started with a call from Inez, my former front desk manager, 5 days after I left. I was in my kitchen, halfway through, my first proper breakfast in years, fresh bread, real butter, no incoming emails, when my phone rang. Her voice was tight, hurried, almost embarrassed. "Jonas, sorry to bother you. There's a small issue with the Nations League bookings." Set down my coffee. "What kind of issue?" "There are overlaps. Some bookings are showing up twice, and we've got 2 different confirmation numbers for the same rooms. Leo thinks it's a display glitch, but..." I didn't need her to finish. The script had stopped running 2 days ago, and now the system was showing its true face. "How many bookings are affected?" I asked. "Maybe 40. But we haven't checked them all yet. The French delegation just called. Some of their suites are marked as unconfirmed. But I can see them in the system. It's just... everything's scrambled. Have you tried running a manual sync?" "Leo doesn't know how. He's contacting corporate tech support. They said someone could fly in Monday. Today was Thursday. The match was on Tuesday. That meant guests would start arriving as early as tomorrow." By that afternoon, I'd received another call, this one from Javier, the head of our housekeeping team. "Jonas, I know you're gone, but we've got a real problem. The system is assigning people to rooms that aren't ready. Some suites are booked twice. A French journalist walked in on a Spanish team sponsor. They both had confirmation codes. I could picture it all, the chaos at the desk, the apologies, the scrambling for a room that didn't exist. And yet, I said nothing more than, "I hope you managed to sort it out." Friday morning brought the second wave. This time Leo himself called. I recognized his voice immediately, still calm, but undercut with something new. Panic. "Hey Jonas. Hope you're well. I was told you had some kind of workaround for the reservation system. We're having a few inconsistencies." I stayed silent for a beat too long. "What exactly are you seeing?" "We've got, like, maybe 70 guests with duplicate bookings. A few cancellations popped up for people who already checked in. There are rooms marked as available that are definitely not. I think the system's pulling data from the wrong platform. It is, I said flatly. It's broken. Has been for over a year. Right. But we thought it was stable. It only looked stable because I was fixing it manually every morning. A long pause. I could hear him breathing through the phone. So, how do we fix it? You'd need to audit every reservation, manually cross-reference them with actual room availability and third-party confirmations. That'll take at least 40 hours, assuming you know what you're doing. Another silence. The guests start arriving in 6 hours. I didn't answer. Jonas, I'm asking for your help. I looked at the window. Outside, my neighbor was trimming a lemon tree. The street was calm. My world finally was quiet. I'm not an employee anymore, Leo. Good luck. I hung up. That evening, as the sun dipped below the rooftops, I imagined the lobby I'd once orchestrated like a symphony, now reduced to noise and confusion. And still, part of me wanted to step back in, fix the mess, calm the storm. But the more honest part knew. I'd been holding that hotel together with tape and faith. They'd wanted to see if it could run without me. Now they were finding out. Saturday morning, the headlines began surfacing. The first was from a local Seville outlet. VIP booking chaos hits Hotel Cielo Azul, ahead of Nations League semifinal. I clicked the link without thinking, the words blurring into an all-too-familiar sequence. According to the article, guests from France's Football Federation had arrived late Friday night, only to find no rooms available. Lobby staff reportedly tried to offer them twin beds in double rooms meant for corporate sponsors. One guest, a French media executive, refused to leave the lobby and slept upright in a velvet armchair, arms crossed, his suitcase as a footrest. By noon, the story had spread. Reuters picked it up, then El País, then L'Equipe. I opened Twitter. Photos began circulating. A packed lobby, suitcases lined along the marble walls, UEFA staff on phones, confused tourists caught in the middle. In one image, a hotel employee was crying at the check-in desk while a red-faced man in a navy blazer pointed angrily over her shoulder. By the time I turned on the television, national coverage had taken over. Spain's Channel 24 aired a segment titled, "Hotel Breakdown Risks International Embarrassment." A correspondent stood outside Cielo Azul, describing the scene as total logistical failure. The Nations League semi-final wasn't just a game, it was a showcase for European unity, Spanish hospitality, and international coordination. And now the headline was about missing rooms and stranded VIPs. I didn't hear from Leo, but Inez called again. Jonas, it's worse than yesterday. We've got UEFA officials sitting on their luggage in the conference hall. Leo tried reassigning rooms. He canceled 4 bookings by mistake. Guests who've been here for 2 days are now being told they don't exist in the system. I rubbed my forehead. Did anyone contact corporate? They're flying in. A crisis team from Madrid, but they won't arrive until tomorrow. The French broadcaster ZTN is threatening legal action. Sponsors are furious. And Leo? He's in the back office. Hasn't come out in over an hour. I think he's overwhelmed. I didn't say it aloud, but the truth was clear. The man they'd chosen to lead the property had already checked out. By 4 p.m., the calls started. Unknown numbers. 2 from UEFA, 1 from a Spanish ministry office. I didn't answer. I let them all go to voicemail. I listened to one. Just one. A frantic voice in English with a heavy French accent pleading for clarity, saying their contracts were at risk and that the hotel was in operational freefall. At 6 p.m., Carmen, our longtime event coordinator, messaged me privately. I don't know what to do anymore. We're improvising. Mason just arrived and started shouting at everyone. Mason Alvarez, regional director, the man who'd signed my termination papers with a polished smile and vague platitudes. He was back, and now the disaster he helped create was erupting in real time. That night, a clip went viral. It showed 2 UEFA delegates arguing with front desk staff while other guests filmed on their phones. Someone added dramatic music. It hit 400,000 views before midnight. Hashtags started trending, Cielo fail and hotel disaster Seville. I sat alone on my terrace watching the night settle over the quiet neighborhood, phone buzzing every few minutes. But I didn't move. I didn't rush in to save anyone. That wasn't my job anymore. I'd spent years keeping the machine running. They thought it could run itself. Now the world was watching it fall apart, and all I had to do was nothing. Sunday morning, just after 7, I heard the knock at my door. Sharp, urgent, no rhythm, of courtesy. I already knew who it was. I took my time answering. Outside stood Mason Alvarez, looking like he hadn't slept. His suit was wrinkled, his tie loose, and there was a thin layer of sweat on his forehead despite the cool spring air. "Jonas," he said, voice tight. "We need to talk." I leaned against the doorframe. "About what?" "You know what? This is out of control. UEFA is threatening to blacklist the entire chain. Sponsors are demanding refunds. We have over 300 guests with nowhere to sleep, and the semifinal is in 48 hours. That sounds like a management problem," I said calmly. His jaw tensed. "Don't play games with me. You knew about the system failures. You should have documented your fixes. What you did was sabotage." I actually laughed. "Sabotage? Mason, I ran that hotel on duct tape and intuition for over a year. I reported the system issues to you a dozen times. Your answer was always the same. We'll evaluate budget next quarter. You should have told Leo. He never asked." Mason stepped forward, frustration bubbling to the surface. "I'll call corporate. I'll tell them you deliberately withheld critical information." "Go ahead," I said. "But my severance agreement includes a non-disparagement clause, and if they come after me, I'll give them every single email, every warning I sent, every meeting where you told me to just work with what we had." His shoulders sagged. For the first time, he looked less like an executive and more like a man dangling off a cliff. "What do you want, Jonas?" he asked. "Name your price." Paused. "It's not about money." "Then what is it?" "It's about respect. You thought experience was replaceable. You thought you could gut the foundation and keep the structure standing. And now you're watching it fall." He was silent. Then, "Please, come back. Just for the week. Fix this." I shook my head. "No. Because the moment I walk back through those doors, this becomes my problem again. You'll use me to patch the system, quiet the storm, and then forget everything once the cameras leave." He didn't deny it. Later that afternoon, he called again. This time with a new offer. Consulting status. Remote. Full salary plus bonuses. I could set my own hours. Rebuild the system from wherever I liked. "And full operational control?" I asked. "Yes," he replied without hesitation. "And hiring oversight? We'll make it happen." I told him I'd consider it. Hung up. And for the first time since leaving, I felt something unexpected. Not revenge. Leverage. It wasn't about being right. It was about being necessary. They'd gambled on flashover foundation, and now they needed the man who used to hold it all together. And if I chose to return, it would be on my terms. By Sunday night, I had an email in my inbox with the consulting offer attached. 6-month contract, remote work, triple my previous salary, paid monthly in advance. No office hours, no physical presence required unless I chose to attend quarterly reviews. They offered full authority over operational systems and direct access to the tech infrastructure. It was generous, almost suspiciously so, but it reeked of desperation more than sincerity. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I called Inez. I needed an honest voice. "How bad is it now?" I asked. "They brought in 3 people from corporate's crisis team," she said. "We've moved guests into the ballroom. Some are sleeping on conference tables. Others were relocated to hotels 2 hours outside Seville. Staff morale is gone." Carmen almost walked out. "We've had 3 resignations in 2 days. And the bookings? They're rebuilding the database from scratch, manually. It'll take at least 2 weeks." That was when the real twist hit me. Not in the form of money, but in the damage. They hadn't calculated. Jonas, she added, our regular corporate clients have started pulling out. 3 major conferences canceled. A wedding party moved to Valencia. They don't trust the brand anymore. I leaned back in my chair, staring out the window. This wasn't just a logistical collapse. It was reputational fallout. The kind that ripples through networks, whispered in meetings, noted in vendor circles. The kind that kills future business without a headline ever written. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I made calls. To old contacts in UEFA, veteran travel agents, event planners I'd worked with for years. Quiet conversations, no favors asked, just listening. And what I heard confirmed everything. Clients weren't angry about the system failure. They were angry that I was gone, because they hadn't trusted the software. They'd trusted me. That gave me an idea. I called Mason the next morning. I'll take the contract, I said, with conditions. What kind? I want more than operational control. I want to oversee hiring for the next general manager. No more 20-somethings with pitch decks. And I want a commitment, a written clause, to build a hospitality integrity program. Real protections for long-term staff, no more silent purges. There was a long pause on the line. You're serious? Dead serious. Done, he said. Whatever you need. They thought they were buying back a technician, but I was about to build something they couldn't fire. 3 months later, I was sitting on the terrace of a quiet inn overlooking the cliffs of Lagos, Portugal. Mornings were spent reviewing system, reports with a fresh espresso in hand, the sea stretching endlessly in front of me. I never stepped foot back inside Hotel Cielo Azul. I didn't need to. The system was stable, the staff were rehired under new protections, and bookings had begun to recover. Clients returned, cautiously at first, then steadily, because they heard Jonas Valente was behind the wheel again, even if only from a distance. Mason kept his job for another month before corporate moved him into an advisory role. The new general manager was a former colleague I'd mentored years ago. A calm, experienced leader who understood that hotel work wasn't about dashboards or brand metrics. It was about people. Always had been. As for me, I bought a small guest house along the coast. Just 12 rooms, family-run, with no app integrations, no loyalty programs, just conversation and service. Guests shake my hand when they arrive. I remember their names without needing a CRM. I used to build someone else's dream. Now, every evening as the sun turns the Atlantic gold, I watch my own unfold, quietly, deliberately, and on my terms. What happened at Hotel Cielo Azul wasn't just a story about one man or one broken system. It was a cautionary tale about what happens when institutions forget the value of human experience. In the rush to modernize, to automate, to optimize, companies often overlook the people who quietly make things work. Until they're gone. And then the cracks aren't just visible, they're public, viral, and expensive. Technology matters. Innovation is essential, but neither replaces judgment, empathy, or lived expertise. In industries like hospitality, where trust is everything, removing the human element isn't a strategy, it's a risk. And maybe that's the real twist. The people who seem outdated, overpaid, or stuck in the old ways are often the ones holding everything together. So if you've ever been undervalued at work, replaced before you were ready, or told that your experience didn't matter, maybe this story says what you've always known deep down. Some things can't be outsourced. If you've made it this far, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever watched something fall apart after you left? Drop a comment. Your story might be more familiar than you think. And if this story stayed with you, consider sharing it. Someone out there needs to hear it today.